Hey, this is Monday, October 5th, my advanced class, not regular, because we're covering different things. If you're a regular one, you click the wrong button, you big silly, so go to the correct one. My advanced kids, we're going to be talking about some things to help you out. We have notes you should have out, because we're going to be filling in more of that on the front side, where it says the secondary short story notes, because we're going to be filling in more of that to go to our next level. And we're going to be talking about the quiz thing here in just a moment, too. Ready? The right screen up there. Aha! There we go. And let's cover information, grades, viewpoints posted, blah, blah, blah. We visited the library already, so if you were not here, bummer for you. And that's where, if you are a virtual kid at home, there's a button on there that says library for the virtual kids. You go clicky, clicky there, and then you're good to go. The B.2 IXL is coming up due tomorrow night. So, well, I guess depending on when you're watching this, Tuesday night. If you're a third period kid watching this, not tomorrow, it's tonight. So however you want to look at it, it is going to be coming due Tuesday night at midnight if you are doing it for actual credity things and stuff like that. Whether you want it for actual credit, extra B points, have it turned in by Tuesday at midnight so I don't have to use it. Again, if you want it for extra B points, make sure you let me know. Then here's what I want to take a look at. I want to go through the quiz with you guys real quick before we get to our learning thing for today. With the quiz, it was a slightly more challenging quiz because it required you to do 3 things on quiz. 1, you had to read story with your own brain. So it involved you going out and reading after 20 years. A lot of the kids did not because they were #team lazy. So you had to go read story. Next up, you had to not be lazy and actually go look up answers. And then 3, you had to actually think, which seemed to throw a lot of people off. Read story, not be lazy, and actually think, which is why a lot of our grades went down much lower than from before because most kids were not prepared for those. Plus, turns out, let me mark Sasha down who's just showed up. Hey, Sasha, nothing like the last minute. Where's that Sasha kid? And to there. Ah, there we go. And to there. As we go through and take a look at quiz, I am going to open it up again for a 3rd attempt if you are wanting to do it. But 3rd attempt, the highest grade you can get is a 22 out of 30, which is a C. This is a C, but it's basically because I'm going to go through and give you all the answers to try and help you out. So if you're one of my kids who bombed it, you get a chance to retake it. If you're a kid that didn't bomb it, I'm going to show you the thinking on it because it was not a tough quiz. I'm not trying to attack you on this one if you're a kid who bombed it. I just want to show you how thinking works. I'm fully aware that for many of you, your past teachers, when they give you quizzes and tests, they just want you to regurgitate information. They're just going to give you information, say, hey, spit it back out at me. That is not how I roll. So now Renzo shows up, these kids. Sydney, speak quickly while I yell at Renzo.
So I know you said you were going to go through the answers on the together, but once everyone submitted it, will you open it up so you can see which one you got wrong? Because I don't remember exactly what I answered on each of my questions.
Well, being is that I'm going to give you all of the answers, that should help 1. 2, I can try. I'm not sure how well Canvas allows me to do that. If it does, I can give it a try.
Okay,
and
thank
that way
you.
you can figure it out. Sure. Nate? I'm going to make it fast. That's not fast. That's staring at me. Right over there. It's from a short story called Harrison Bergeron.
I think I read that one.
Oh,
I read that.
down tire. Good job, Sasha. That's Mike way into the last one. All right, then coverage of that one, resubmit. Purely optional if you want to. Let's go through and see how smartical you guys are. All right, so from story of after 20 years. This question was one that was probably one of the tougher ones on there that I had a lot of kids miss because theme in general is not super duper easy. Squid Kids. Are you have another question or you just not put your hand down? Because your hand is still up. Uh-oh, you gave me the face. That's the I forgot to put my hand down face. All right, just making sure. Then, so which of these is the most important to the story? It impacts more of the story than the others. On here, as you went through it, my goal was to try and hit as many characters as possible. Revenge was 1. Don't go off my fake one, the imposter one, because that goes back to our whole Among Us. But revenge, Jimmy sends Bob to jail, only it sort of impacts the one. Time has nothing to do with theme whatsoever. That was just me seeing which kids paid attention. So basically it came down to usually deception and loyalty. Loyalty applied to 3 characters. Deception kind of applied to 2 characters. So the idea of each person being loyal to someone impacted a lot more. Plus, if you watch that video of me walking you through the story and explaining things to you, I explain how that theme works the best, which is why I gave you guys the video ahead of time to try and go through and explain things to you, which is that whole not being lazy. Yeah, it was on the link from last week. I said, go watch this video, where I went through and explained the entire story to you guys. And yeah, again, I went through and explained the story on the video link that I gave you guys, and that was the whole which kids paid attention and watched it. If you did, it made things much easier. If you didn't, then yes, it was probably a struggle. So loyalty was our best theme for that one because it connects to everybody. You have Bob, who's being loyal to his friend, showing up. Jimmy being loyal to his friend by trying not to arrest him. And the plainclothes undercover cop being loyal because he goes and arrests a criminal. So all 3 people are being loyal to somebody. 2, the best point of view for the story. Well, hang on one second. I'm going to do a thing here. So Schnipple, no offense dear, but I am going to turn off your video. And then Snyder, because you have the same issue, I'm also turning off your video because you have small child that's being distracting. Point of view in story. It's not being told to you by the main character. So if it's not being told by main character, what point of view would it be? There's only 6 of you. You're going to have to speak up.
3rd person.
Good job. It's going to be 3rd person. So then as we go through it, you had to figure out, was it limited to 1 or did it jump around? Well, 1, what character does it start off following?
Wow. Jimmy.
It follows off a policeman walking down the street, opening a whole bunch of doors. And since it follows him at the very beginning, that would be starting off limited, but then he leaves and we just have Bob. Since it leaves one and goes to the other, it becomes omniscient because it follows both Jimmy and Bob. Starts off the very beginning following Jimmy and then switches to Bob. So 3rd omniscient following both Jimmy and Bob. Question 3. For the story, blah, 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 what is Jimmy's most difficult, challenging internal conflict? So on this one, again, you had to have that choice going into it. At the end of story, who did we find out Jimmy was? Which police cop? There's 2 of them. The one at the very beginning. So opening of story guy, that is the best friend Jimmy, who never tells Bob that's who he is until the very end. So when Jimmy realizes his best friend is a criminal and Jimmy is a police officer, what is Jimmy supposed to do? Does he? So that's where part of our issue comes in. But he realizes of the ones on there, run from the policeman, nope, that's a different person. Show up at a meeting place or just skip it all together, possibly, but he never even talks about that being in there. Turn in friend or let him go, and then arrest Bob himself or not do it so the plainclothes guy can. Those become the 2 you have to fight between. This one looks really tempting, but what's wrong with it? Nicely done. It says not, so you could not choose the one that said not in it. But a lot of you guys kept picking that one because you refused to listen to me when I yell at you and say, don't choose the one that has not in it. So then the only answer that works is the one that says turn in friend or let him go. And this is where some of you guys open hand, smash against forehead and go, why me so dumb? It's okay. It's a thinking thing. This is where we struggle. So I'm trying to help you out. Again, not a tough quiz. It requires you to think and go slowly. Mr. Broviak, thinking is hard. I'm aware. Elena, speak quickly.
Okay, thinking isn't our problem. It's following directions.
Well, that's part of the thinking. They go hand in hand. But yes, I agree. Following directions is also a struggle. When is it that Jimmy first realizes that Bob is a wanted criminal? So this goes back into reading story. This was a, did you go back and look into story to figure out when it is? Rush, when does he figure it out? And that's the first time when because Jimmy doesn't even get a chance to talk. As soon as policeman Jimmy shows up, Bob starts talking. He was like, hey, you probably think this is weird. Slow down. It's okay. And then before his friend can respond, Bob lights up his cigar. And he's like, choo, and lights up his face. And all of a sudden, Jimmy realizes, my friend I'm here to meet, I recognize this face as a wanted man. So it's when he lights it up, that is when he then realizes it. And that's when Jimmy has to make the decision, do I arrest him right now, or am I going to have someone else come do it for me? Again, this was a, did you go back and read the story, or did you make like a chicken and try to wing it?
Well, Mr. Broviak, chickens can't fly.
Yeah, that's why a lot of you guys messed that one up. Who does Bob? There are a lot of answers that would work for this one. But essentially, at the very end, Bob reads note, and it says signed Jimmy. And it says, hey, I'm not who you think I am. I'm not the guy you're currently standing next to. Because we find out that, as you mentioned a second ago, Jimmy is the guy from the very beginning. So you had to describe Jimmy in a way that I knew who you were talking about. So I usually took either patrolman or police or something like that, where it's not undercover guy. You couldn't just put man or that dude. I was looking for something that told me you knew who he was. And he was the guy from the very beginning of the story. That was friend Jimmy, who was there to arrest Bob. Oh, also, by the way, if you guys read, because for all of our quizzes and tests moving forward, you are going to have to read stories, poems, everything on your own. So if you read them ahead of time, I'm happy to answer questions if you guys have them. If you wait until you're taking quiz, I can't answer them then. That is too late. Mac now, what's up?
Could you have said like cop?
Probably. I think I took cop on that one too. I just could not do like underclothes. The problem was I had to make their undercover guy. I had to make sure it's different than the guy at the end. So I had to find answers that were not mentioned for the guy at the end, because that guy is not his friend. So that's where it makes it a little bit tough. So from the story, this is when Bob is walking out and they get into the street light and he looks over at Jimmy and he realizes there's two things wrong. You had to mark two answers on this one for the two things he recognizes. Ooh. All right, hang on a second. Kids who are on home thing, we're going to get this one to you. I'm not calling on you. Activate chat. It's been a while since we've done chat. Put in one of the two things into chat. Let's see how smartical you guys are. What are the two? And spelling is overrated. Ooh, Talbot, my first one to get both of them. All right. Everyone, and there we go. And Rosito with two of them. Nicely done. All right. His height and nose are the two things he talks about. He was like, how did you get taller? And he talks about his nose changing from like a this kind of nose, where it's like a tuka to like a, I don't know, like a weird nose where it turns up with the, I don't know. It's a Roman to a pug, but I was trying to describe what they look like in some way. Rush.
On the height part, technically, I mean, somebody can grow, right?
They
So
can.
you can't really say like, oh, his height's gonna be
True, but the thing is, they separated when they were already adults. And typically, when you're like an oldie person, you don't all of a sudden grow several more inches. I mean, is it possible? Yes, for you guys, absolutely. But they went their separate ways in their 20s, and then you don't usually start growing again. Could be. Wait, back up. Oh, there we go. From the story you read, blah, 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 we separated the words. This one essentially was just, can you guys look up words, know what you're doing? I tried to give you easy one. Can you go as I keep telling you, if you can Google answer, Google answer. So I tried to give you question that allowed you to Google answer. And then if you go look up staunch, it has a bunch of definitions. In this particular story though, only one of them actually connects to what's going on. And that's the loyal and well-meaning when he says he was the staunchest friend ever. He would always show up and do good things for me. So that just goes back to, can you read definitions on Google and then go back and mention them in the story? So just trying to see how, once again, this was a lazy check. Excuse me. So this goes back into story when Jimmy, the patrolman, is talking to Bob, the criminal, and he goes, hey, are you going to call time sharp? which means, are you going to leave as soon as the time comes up? And he goes, no. He goes, I'll hang out for a little bit longer because I've not seen my friend in forever. And I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that he's going to get here. And then the patrolman's like, all right. And it makes it sound on the story like he's double checking in case he's still going to be hanging out in the doorway. That's not the real reason he wants to know. If you did not pick up on this in the story, again, I explained it in the video I showed where I gave you guys, and I helped explain it there. But the real reason he's trying to figure out if he's going to call time sharp, and this came down to, did you understand story? Having to think your way through it. And his whole point is, I don't want to have to arrest my best friend. I want to go get someone else to do it. I have to find someone to do that one. So it's going to require time for me to get there. So it becomes to see if he has the time to run and find somebody and then get back. So that's why he was asking and going for it. And that was easy. Another one that required thinking. It says, which of these is not the best part of the plot? Here's why this one's not the best part of the plot. It's not plot at all. One of them is a character description. A character description is not plot. A character description is character. Sorry. Don't you tell me to settle down, Rutsito. Kids kept missing this one, and it gets me all worked up and angry. So on there, if you look at it, one of those is about a character and not about plot at all. And as soon as you think about it that way and go, oh, McGurd, it's so obvious. Bob is scarred on his face and wears rich clothes. That has nothing to do with plot. That's telling us what kind of person Bob is. So that was the whole, can you tell the difference between what this thing is? It's not part of plot because it's part of character. All right. Speaking of, can you figure out character descriptions? I did the same thing on this one. One of these is not a good character description. So unlike plot, I jumped to character. So my question is, why is this one the correct answer? Why would that not work? Kyla, so you can stop yelling at me, Kyla. Why is that the best answer?
Because that would work for the king too.
There you go. Because I told you that the character description has to work for just one character, and this particular one would also work for the boy, which is why it does not work as a good character description. So again, should not have been hard. It just required you to think. Right? Yeah, that'd be weird. I agree. Again, this one should have been an easy give me. It was pretty much just, can you read your own notes? It just said, ooh, all right, people on chat, give me chat answer on this one. So my chat answer, what is it that answers this question? So I get to pick on you guys instead. And nice. Oh, Owen's on fire. Owen taking it first. Oh no, people have, this one should be the one that says one choice or another choice, not something versus something. So one choice or another choice, which should be internal conflict. It should, one, spelling did count. If you spelled it wrong, it was wrong, because that's your own issue for not knowing how to spell when it was right in front of you. Ooh, archaic language. This one was a little bit tougher because it did require you to think a little bit. The archaic language, these, thous, thys, stuff like that, where you had to say what, we'll just back up to this one. Avery, I'm gonna pick on you for a moment, dear. The archaic pronouns, when the characters used them, what did it show they had over other characters? Power. So the whole point of archaic pronouns was power. Thou is correct. I say a good job to thee. I'm a little loud. You're good to go. I understand. I'm beating their brains with extra education and they're already full. Hallway children. So on here, that was not the exact answer. So it's going to require you to do a little bit of thinking on that. So on this one, I tried to throw you off by putting the word power in multiple answers in case you were just a lazy kid that just looked for power and clicked on it. It shows why the fisherman is poor and powerless. Nope, I just put the word power in there to trick you. It shows the genie is always the most powerful. He's not always the most powerful, so it can't be that one. And it shows that the fisherman gains power. The fisherman does gain power. And you know that because he uses the archaic pronouns at the end. And then for the external conflict from the story of the fisherman, again, this should be a three. Who are the two sides that fight each other? And nicely done, genie and fisherman. What goes between the two of them? There you go. I did have kids miss this because they can't spell. If you made it fishermen, plural, you got it wrong because you can't spell. If you missed the spelling of genie, G-E-N-I, you got it wrong because, again, it was right there in the story in front of you. If you're too lazy to look it up, I'm too lazy to give you credit. Retsito.
What happens if we spelled everything right and you put fisherman vs genie? You get that wrong?
12 different versions on there. You could also do genie versus fisherman, fisherman versus genie, fisherman vs period. So I had the verses, I had like 12 different versions of that. If you spelled fisherman and genie wrong, that's on you, boo-boo. But spelling verses, that one I wasn't bothered with. That one I had different versions in there, so you should be good to go there. And it did not matter if it was capital or lowercase. That was not a thing that bothered me either. Good job, Squidkins. Way to jump in on the chat. I'm proud of you there. And 14. From the story of the fisherman, I ended up stealing this from a kid. When you guys kept coming up with your own answers and which ones of yours are better than mine, this was, did you pay attention in the story? One of these actually works in the story, and being is the fact that fisherman was nice and good things happened to him, and genie was bad and bad things happened to him, it kind of stuck right with that karma thing. And finally, at the very end of Lady or the Tiger, the point of view switches, and it goes from third person omniscient to all of a sudden saying, dear reader, what do you think? Do you know who came out? What is going on with you, dear reader? And for those of you who have hands on screen, what point of view is it when it goes to saying you? And you can just use your hands to demonstrate this. What point of view is it? Nicely done, children at home. Children who are here, what point of view is it? Looking for your hand. But that's okay, I'll yell at you. Still, second person. Point of view. Because it jumps and says that thing that should have been straight in your notes. Oh, good job, kids who jumped in on chat at home. So it should have been straight there to picking that one. For those of you who are at home now, and for those of you who are going to be at home later, I understand learning at home can be a wee bit of a challenge, and it's easy to tune things out. Completely understand that. Drawback is I'm still going to keep pushing you to become smarter. I'm not giving up on you to become smarter. Yeah, you probably did spell fisherman wrong. That's one of the things that happened for a lot of kids. They kept trying to make it plural, and I'm like, sometimes learning is painful. This is pretty much the level of my quizzes and tests moving forward. If you did well on this, go you. If you did not do well on this, figure out why. Was it a matter of not having read the story? Was it a matter of being team lazy? Was it more a matter of just not thinking things through? But my goal is, I'm not going to give you questions that just require you to regurgitate, meaning just to spit back what I tell you. In class, my goal is to teach you a skill, and then on quizzes, you use that skill to figure things out. The drawback is, some of you guys don't learn anything during class. You just stare at wall and drool. Then it comes time for a quiz, and you're like, Mr. Broviak, I have no skills. And I'm like, I know, but I tried. Speaking of teaching kids skills, let's go to more skills. It's time for more learning. Going over that was only the beginning. Now, go to your notes. This notes thing that we've been covering with you, you're going to go to bottom of that front page where it says the secondary things. And we're going to be filling in things on secondary things. So notes, front side, going down to bottom. going to help you out. The drawback is there's going to be a lot of writing in a moment, is we're just writing down definitions. Then I'm going to explain it to you, and then we're going to practice it. This is that skills thing I keep trying to tell you guys about. All right, good luck. 5 things. Now I'm going to explain all 5 of them to you. Exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution. So we're going to give you these 5 things to put into it. Thought it was on your computery thing. Is it not on computery thing? Or you just not want to put it on the computery thing? You were just confusing me. I do. You want to give me a shoe and I'll give you a footboard. I'll give you a shoe. Oh, maybe I was looking about some weird exchange thing you were doing. All right. So, as I've told you, we break each story up into 5 parts. This is sort of how it's going to connect to things. The first part of every story is exposition. That is the beginning of the story where we introduce all of the characters. Typically, it's the boring part at the very beginning, where it's going to tell you, as an example, that there's a young boy with a scar on his head who lives underneath the stairs, and eventually he's going to find out that he has special powers and he can waggle a stick in the air and make wonderful things happen. We're going to call him Harry. That is our exposition, where we find out all this beginning boring stuff, and you're like, oh, who cares about all this? Get to the exciting stuff. Exposition, beginning of story, boring. Then we're going to go to rising action, which is the next part. Rising action is where we get to the suspense and the actiony things. Rising action, we find out that you're a wizard, Harry, and he gets to go to Hogwarts, and he gets to meet a whole bunch of old people, and they give him a magic wiggle stick, and all of a sudden he gets to go out there and meet all these other people. And you're like, ooh, Magic Harry Man is going to have good things happen to him. Nate? Yeah, I know. I'm not done yet. We still have 3 more to get through. And then we get to climax. And then climax is your most exciting moment in the story. It is your Ermagerd moment, where whenever that thing happens, you're like, Ermagerd! And so this particular story, we're going to find out that the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher has a magic man growing out of the back of his brain, and he wears a special hat to hide it, and he tries to kill Boy with Stick, and Boy with Stick goes, no, death, and Wiggle Stick, and survives. That is our climax. And you're like, I thought Boy with Wiggle Stick was going to die. And you're like, no Wiggle Stick death. That is our climax. And then we get to falling action, which is where the story sort of explains after the Wiggle Stick happens. And now all of a sudden you're like, oh no, we still have to finish the rest of the school year and worry about the Defense of the Dark Arts teacher. And now you made a new friend with a redhead and a girl, and everything is happy. And someday they're going to see each other again. So they explain about the man who's trying to kill you. Now we get to find out about Voldemort and the fact that he exists. And it sort of explains everything that happened in your oh my God moment. Nope, I did that already. So when you were busy getting that. It's a listening thing. It's overrated. And then resolution. Oh, blocking part of the screen. Your resolution. There we go. Is at the very end of the story, where it sort of either leads into the next story or sort of gives us wrap up on things. When it's like, oh, Harry, we're going to meet each other over the summertime and hang out, and you're going to come back next year. And hopefully No-Nose Man doesn't come back to kill you again because he gave you a scar on your head. And resolution is the very end of the story where things wrap up. And in a moment, this is getting ready to disappear so we can practice putting the information together. Yep, it's called being slow. All right, don't know what you want me to tell you. From there. If it helps, it'll come back again in a moment. Did you just take a picture of my screen with your phone? Uh-huh. Yeah, I saw that one. And you're going to growl at me. Down, tiger. you don't have to have it all exactly word for word. Again, as long as you can figure it out come time for a quiz, you should be good. If by now you've not figured out, so use this as a learning moment for those of you who are at home also. When it comes time for a quiz, I'm not making you match these word for word to something. You've now been through a bunch of my quizzes. You know how things work. What I'm going to make you do is figure out what the resolution is in a story. And so if you don't know what a resolution is in a story, looking at your notes can make things a lot easier for you. So if it's not written down word for word, I'm okay with that. Is that an indie screen park hat? Nicely done. It took me a second to recognize it. You kept covering it with your hand, but I've been there with my daughters. So if you don't write everything down word for word, again, that's fine, as long as you write down enough that you can figure it out later. In a moment, we're going to practice. This screen is going to come back. It's that one right there. That's wait. Oh, you got lucky. I'm on the wrong thing. Clicky, clicky, ticky, talkie. Nicky slide. There we go. Again, it's going to come back. Somewhere on your notes sheet, you're going to find room to draw this little pyramid-y thing. If only there was a backside. It's right there. So, oh my goodness, wow, you're going to have a heart attack this year. It's a good thing I don't give very many notes. Again, this is to make life a little bit easier for you. Do you have to write this down? Heck no. Several of you have been staring at the wall this entire time. I can't control you. I'm trying to make life easier. So it's called Story Mountain because most stories, this is like the thickness of the line is how much interest and excitement we have in story as the story goes along. So we start at the very beginning. And what's the very first thing that happens in story? All together should be? Nicely done. And so you start off with exposition. There's not a whole lot of interesting thing happen. It's kind of on the boring side. We're introducing characters and talking about stuff. Then we start to get all interested and exciting, and the action ramps up. So what comes after exposition? Look at that. Then we get to rising action, and we're like, ooh, this story is not bad. I'm actually getting kind of interested in it. This wizard boy thing might be kind of cool. Then you get to the most exciting moment in story, and that is we're learning. And that's where climax comes in. You're like, no, wizard boy, don't die. Wiggle your stick, wiggle your stick. And he doesn't die. And then after climax, we're like, woo, he's not dead. He gets to come back next year. And then we're going to have what comes after climax? Because now we have rising action. And the opposite of that's going to be falling action as we get to calm down a little bit. Then at the very end of the story, when they're wrapping things up, we're back to not being very exciting and it's kind of boring again. At the very end, it's going to be, at the very end comes resolution. All right. I have one more thing to help you with before we practice these. I'm going to give you really short definitions to try and help you guys out even more. For exposition, see, I told you it'd show up again. You'd have to freak out completely. For exposition, let's go with the easier way to remember it is boring beginning stuff. Whenever I refer to exposition, I'm going to call it boring beginning stuff. If you happen to have Mrs. Fresh right now, she loves it when you refer to exposition as boring beginning stuff, because that's what you call the very, very beginning of the story. Instead of exposition, I'll say, what's exposition? You'll go, is that the boring beginning stuff? And I'll go, disco, you are good to go. Then we get to rising action. And my easy way of defining rising action is exciting stuff. If it's exciting, it's probably in rising action. That's why they rhyme with each other. It was on purpose, he says accidentally. Then you get to climax, and the climax is going to be your OMG moment. Pronounced Ermagerd. It is your Ermagerd moment. And you're like, what? Scarboy is getting attacked by No-Nose Man. What's going to happen? Death to everybody. And so it becomes your major OMG moment. Falling action is your OMG explanation. where they explained what happened in that OMG moment. And then we're going to get to resolution. And resolution is boring ending stuff. So they kind of connect to each other. Exposition, resolution, they're both boring, and one's at the beginning, one's at the ending. And then you have both rising and falling action, exciting stuff, and then the explanation of the exciting stuff. And then the climax, the most exciting thing that happens at the top. So that's how Story Mountain works. Now, we're going to practice figuring out how they fit stories. So I'm giving my people a moment to finish writing these down. We're going to move on. Scritchy, scratchy, scratchy, scritchy. Scratch my face. All right. This next part you don't have to write down. We're just going to practice together and make sure that you guys have some idea of how this works. It's coming up for our story on Wednesday, the landlady. We're going to start applying this to it. And then next week for your quiz, because we don't have a quiz this week, we'll do a quiz next week, we're going to have you apply the stuff to that story also. To be able to figure out these 5 things. The exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution. Let's try together. We're going to look at the story of the fisherman. I'm going to read the 5 things to you, and you have to figure out which one is which. Exposition, rising action, falling action, stuff like that. So I'll read them. Those of you who have your own eyeballs, you can read them too. We're going to figure out which one goes where. The fisherman only fishes a certain number of times, and his final time brings in a jar. We discover the genie wants to kill the fisherman, and the poor guy must find a way to survive. The fisherman's plan gets the genie back in the jar. The genie begs to be released from the jar, and the fisherman explains his future plans to the genie. What's the very first thing every story begins with? And what is exposition?
Boring beginning stuff.
Nicely done. The boring beginning stuff. Here, which one? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those of you at home, by finger, which one of those do you think is exposition? You hold up finger, as I'm looking here at these people, and they have. Good job, kids who voted. You are correct. That is our exposition. What comes after exposition? Wait, those of you at home, if you would like to play the yelling at me game, you may unmute as long as you don't have any background sound. When I ask a question, you may feel free to yell at me also. What comes after exposition?
Climax.
No.
Rising action.
Nicely done. And what is the easy definition of rising action?
Cool stuff.
Exciting stuff.
Now hold up finger for which one you think is rising action. And I'm seeing finger numbers. I'm looking at finger numbers there. 6 is not a finger number. It only goes to 5, you confused child, unless you're trying to figure out math. So the rising action is where it gets exciting. And this, I would imagine, genie wanting to kill fishermen should qualify as exciting because it's death. Okay, you have me confused like you were doing zeros. Like bold move. I would agree. Should be number 2 is your rising action. What comes after rising action?
Climax.
Good job. Now you're in. Ooh,
Oh
what is our
my
definition of climax?
Major OMG moment.
Wow, Maddie was excited on that one. Oh no! Wednesday, we're going to come back to figuring out our mountain, and then we're going to get into a really fun story. Landlady is a story that is going to haunt you guys more so than I could possibly put into words. It is what we're going to be building up to this entire time. Has been going to that story to make things fun. You got to have patience, boo-boo. So see you guys later. Your only homework.
Wait, Mr. Broviak, very haunting story. I should bring my 2nd grade siblings, right?
Yes. And then read, hi, me still teaching, making me yell at children. That's my low-key way of saying, sit down, horrible children. Sorry, there's kids here whose hearts are not full of love.